we've been talking about the main idea of each chapter, okay? We talked about yesterday what chapter. Does anyone remember what we learned yesterday about sharks? I'll go back to the chapter we talked about. Who remembers what our main idea was about? Overall, what did it talk about? Sharks what? Brooklyn? Good, a shark's teeth. And we learned a lot of facts about the shark's teeth. So,
Courtney, we're here to talk about the observation.
Yes.
In the video that we recorded during your reading lesson.
Yes.
So, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you rate your lesson?
I would give it a 6. It wasn't the worst lesson I've done. It wasn't obviously the best lesson I've done. So I'd say like 5 or 6.
A 5 or 6.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, what pleased you about this lesson?
I was happy with how I felt the students were excited about the topic that we're doing. They are interested in nonfiction text features, and we were doing a book on sharks for Lucy Calkins. So I feel like they were really interested in the topic, which meant that they were more engaged and motivated to answer questions that I asked. Overall, that chapter, our heading tells us that it's going to be discussing their teeth. Now today as we read, we're going to talk about the key details that we find in each chapter. So go ahead and look at my bookmark here. Miss Featherston has one up here. And guess what? She made one for each of you. Yay! So you will be getting a bookmark as well. It is laminated so that it's not easy to break. And it says at the top, readers hang on key details. So we have our main...
I saw that you had like bookmarks in there.
Yeah.
Were you using those bookmarks for them to transition into small groups?
Yes, so I had a bookmark and I showed them how to use it based off of key detail questions, and then they went into their small reading groups and they each had their own bookmark as well that I gave them.
Oh, perfect. Okay, what would you have changed to maybe make it more like a 10?
I struggle with during reading when I do a Lucy Calkins lesson is that I ask questions and I call on 1 or 2 students, and sometimes we do a turn and talk with their partner, but I wish that they all could be involved at one time so that they all could be answering questions and that I could see that they're all understanding key details or main idea or nonfiction text features, whatever we're going over that day. So I would like for them all to be involved at once.
Okay, so maybe increasing like student engagement with Lucy, because sometimes it can get kind of dry.
Right, exactly. Yeah, we follow a strict script, and so sometimes I wish there was like a way to just make sure they were all engaged.
Yeah, and I really liked how you, connected all the lessons together, and you were asking private questions, so that you could transition into your bookmarks. Okay, so what would your students be doing differently if your class was a 10?
So I think if each of them could be involved in answering the questions or in the lesson, because sometimes I notice some students not as involved and I see similar students raising their hands, and then I'm not sure if everyone understood or if everyone grasped the concept that I was teaching in my Lucy lesson that day. So I think that would help get it towards a 10, is just making sure that they all were engaged and motivated and interested.
Right. So
Idea what this whole chapter is going to be about. And then we have some questions to help us figure out what are the key details in this chapter. For example, who or what is this chapter mostly about? Okay, we have a topic, and then we're going to read the key details to find out what supports that main idea. It then asks, what is happening? What is going on in this chapter? Put your hands down for a second. Let me get through. Thank you for your hands. And then it says, when or where is this taking place? So we have to think. This nonfiction book may not tell us exactly when. We have had a few dates in here, but it has told us a lot about where some of this is happening. Where are these sharks typically living? It says, why is this happening, or why is this important, and how does this work? So some of these we can answer throughout the chapter to help us figure out those key details. So I'm going to keep...
So here we're trying to look for something that is more technology rich.
Right.
So are there any tools, technology tools that you are familiar with?
So I'm kind of familiar with Nearpod, but I've only used it in my math instruction.
Right.
Because it's
at first in my mind it was just easier to do it within math because I could put math questions on the Nearpod and they would draw it out or answer the questions. And I never really thought about doing it with reading, so I think that would be a good way if they all had their own iPad, then they all could answer questions that I ask and follow along the pages on the book through the Nearpod maybe?
Definitely,
Okay.
definitely. So tell me more about, like, maybe if we did use Nearpod, since you are familiar with that, what would it look like? Could we incorporate some of the book pages or questions?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking is I normally right now I'm doing like a few pages a day, a chapter a day in our shark book. So if I could put those pages maybe as like a picture into it so that when it's on my board, it's also on their screen.
Right.
And they can look at it with me, and then when we move on, there's questions on the next page that they answer so that all of them are answering questions, and then it will come up on my board.
Yeah. So you are familiar with like what Nearpod you can do with Nearpod, like the formative assessments that are involved. So what type of like assessments could we incorporate into that?
Right. So on Nearpod, a few times I've used, they have like a poll where I can ask a question maybe and they can answer it, and that way it'll give every student's answered, or like an open-ended question, like because that's kind of what I do. Is I ask an open-ended question and then I take hands, but that way if I did the Nearpod, then they all would answer it, and then all the answers would be on the board.
For sure. And I don't know if you know that there is a feature where there's like a discussion board, like a little cork board, and they could like
I've
post
seen that
questions.
before, but I've never used it in math yet.
Do you think how could we incorporate that into?
So maybe if I ask a question, it's almost kind of like a ticket out the door, like a sticky note. They could type in their answer and then put it on the discussion board, and then we can see everyone's and kind of go through the different stickies that people put up.
Oh, for sure. Yes.
Okay.
My bookmark up here, and we're going to read a little bit about our sharks. So our chapter title is Now You See Them. Look at my label here. What kind of shark is this? Aiden? A lantern shark. My label tells me this is a lantern shark. Someone tell me what a lantern is. Maha?
It's like a little thing that gives you light.
Excellent. A lantern, if it's dark, kind of like how we have the lights off in here. You can hold your lantern up. It's got maybe a candle or a light inside, a light bulb, and you turn it on to have some light in the dark. So what does that make you think this fish does? It's called a lantern shark. What does it probably do, Kira?
It probably has like super nice stuff, and whenever it pops off the water, it might show light.
Okay, so maybe it illuminates some sort of light. It kind of looks like it in the picture. So Miss Featherston is going to read starting over here. I want you to follow this time.
Some ways that we can measure student engagement.
So I think maybe if we include the Nearpod into the lessons, maybe just try one for now.
Right.
We create one together and then use it within one of my lessons, maybe in the upcoming few weeks, and see how that works and see what parts of the Nearpod we like, and then hopefully continue that throughout the year. Maybe like set a goal for how often I do that during reading, because right now, again, I don't do it at all in reading.
Right.
Only in math sometimes, so.
Okay, so maybe we could even look at how the kids are reacting to the Nearpod.
Yeah.
Maybe like a thumbs up or thumbs down, or even like a number scale for them.
Okay.
Like what kind of like what we did for how you rated your lesson.
Okay.
We could do something like that.
Yeah. See if they feel more engaged or excited about the lesson, which I think they would be because they love using the technology. So.
Oh, for sure. Technology always gets them engaged.
Yeah, it does.
To see what it is. So let's look at my bookmark. We've learned some key details. My first question says, who or what is this mostly about? So far, what have these 2 pages in this chapter mostly been about? What is this overall teaching us, Kaylee?
About lantern sharks.
Okay, good. About lantern sharks specifically, that's a good key detail. Maybe some other sharks that are glow in the dark.
Okay, so what would you consider your goal to be? How could we define your goal?
So should I try to do maybe like a Nearpod every few lessons or every so many lessons? Maybe that would be a good goal, because that way they're excited about it when it comes up and they know that that's coming up.
Right. As like a review or something.
Right, yeah. Maybe throughout the units, do a few Nearpods throughout the unit.
Yeah, I think that would be great.
Normally if we have a unit, do a few throughout it.
Yeah, so I know that with Lucy we have like up to 10 sessions in a unit, so we could do maybe every 5 or something as a review.
Okay.
That's
a good goal.
Yeah, so, okay, if you could hit that goal, like incorporating your pod into your lesson, would it really matter to you?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, because I have been looking for ways to involve all of my students at once and to get them excited about their learning. And I think that would be a great way to do it in reading, because in math it works.
Yeah.
So I think that would be a good transition now for me to do it in reading.
And I've heard like some of my kids come back in and they're like, we did a Nearpod.
Yeah.
And
they like the
it.
Nearpods.
They love it. So what teaching strategy could we use to hit your goal? If we think about like a teaching strategy.
Maybe if we plan it out, we can also have differentiation on there.
Yeah, for sure.
I think would be good. I have ESOL students in my classroom as well, and then obviously different levels. So I think that could be incorporated into the Nearpod as well.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And then could we transition that maybe into your small groups?
Yeah. Absolutely, into the small groups. That would be a good idea.
And then incorporate that work into your small groups as well?
Yeah, that way they get a whole group, and then we strategize it and move it into the small group so that I can then differentiate it in there as well.
Perfect. So what are our next steps? What do I need to help you with to find? Or what can I help you create? What are our next steps?
So we're still doing nonfiction.
Yes.
For a few more weeks. So I would say we can create a Nearpod we're going to do another shark book to compare and contrast the two coming up. So maybe with the next shark book, we can create a Nearpod on it and then start that in one of our lessons, and then see how it goes from there, and then meet back up and see how that went.
How we felt.
Yeah.
Okay, that's perfect.
Okay.
I love it, and I'm excited. I think this Nearpod.
All right, let's see. What is happening in these 2 pages? What has been happening, Aiden?
It's teaching about us how lantern sharks glow.
Excellent. It's taught us about how lantern sharks glow. Where is this taking place? We did learn where we find these sharks. Where do we find these sharks? Declan?
We're out in the ocean and down into the deep sea.